The wind howled outside Research Station Delta 7 like an angry beast. Taeyong Kim sat at his desk, watching the temperature display drop lower and lower. -35 degrees, then -37. The numbers kept falling as the sun disappeared behind the frozen mountains of Draken Prime. He rubbed his tired eyes and saved his research notes. Another long day of studying ice samples and rock formations was finally over. The station felt emptier than usual tonight. Taeyong had been alone here for 3 months now, and sometimes the silence pressed against his ears like cotton. The small research station was his home now. It had 6 rooms in total. A lab where he worked, a kitchen that was barely big enough for one person, a bathroom, a storage area, a communication room, and his sleeping quarters. Everything was built from thick metal walls to keep out the deadly cold of this frozen moon. Taeyong walked to the kitchen and heated up his dinner. The food came from packages, all prepared months ago on the main base. Rice, vegetables, and some protein that tasted like chicken but probably wasn't. He ate slowly, reading a book on his tablet about Earth's old forests. He missed trees. Draken Prime had no trees, only ice and rock and endless wind. After dinner, he checked all the station systems one more time. This was his routine every night. The heating system was working at full power. The oxygen generator hummed steadily. The water recycler showed green lights. Everything was fine. Everything was always fine, and yet he checked every single night anyway. The communication screen blinked. A message from the main base, 300 kilometers away. It was from Dr. Yuna, his supervisor. Weather alert for your sector. Temperature dropping to -45 tonight. Storm coming tomorrow. Stay inside and keep warm. Report in the morning. Taeyong typed back a quick reply. Understood. All systems normal. Will report at 0800. He looked at the clock. It was already past midnight. Time moved strangely when you lived alone on a frozen moon. Sometimes days felt like hours. Sometimes hours felt like days. Taeyong went to his sleeping quarters and changed into his thermal sleeping clothes. The room was small but comfortable. A bed, a small desk, a chair, and a locker for his personal things. Pictures of his family were stuck to the wall. His parents, his younger sister, his old dog from childhood. All of them were far away on Earth, living their normal lives while he froze on the edge of explored space. He climbed into bed and pulled the heated blanket over himself. The blanket was the best technology humanity had invented, in his opinion. It sensed body temperature and adjusted its warmth automatically. Within seconds, he felt cozy and safe in the cold outside. Sleep came quickly. Taeyong dreamed of warm beaches and sunshine. Then something woke him up. A sound, soft but persistent. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Taeyong opened his eyes. The room was dark except for the small emergency light near the door. The scratching sound came again. It was coming from near the floor, somewhere close to the door. He sat up slowly, listening. His heart beat a little faster. Nothing should be making sounds in his station. He lived alone. The door was sealed. The ventilation system had filters too small for anything bigger than dust to pass through. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Taeyong turned on the light. The room flooded with brightness, and he blinked against it. He looked at the door. Nothing there. He looked at the walls. Nothing there either. Then he heard a different sound. A tiny chirp, like a bird but not quite. It sounded scared and cold. Taeyong got out of bed and walked slowly toward the door. The sound was coming from the corner near the ventilation vent. He knelt down and looked closer. 3 pairs of eyes stared back at him. Taeyong froze. His brain tried to make sense of what he was seeing. 3 small creatures huddled together in the corner of his room. They were shivering, their tiny bodies shaking so hard he could see it even in the dim light. He moved closer, very slowly, and his breath caught in his throat. Dragon babies. 3 of them. They were no bigger than kittens, with scales that looked almost transparent in the light. Their wings were folded tight against their bodies, thin membranes that looked too delicate to ever fly. Their eyes were huge and round, filled with fear and cold. One of them opened its mouth and made that chirping sound again. Taeyong had seen pictures of the dragon creatures that lived in the mountains of Draken Prime. Adult dragons were massive, with wingspans of 10 meters or more. They were shy and stayed far away from the human research bases. Nobody had ever seen a baby dragon before. Nobody even knew how they raised their young. And now 3 of them were in his room, shivering and crying in the corner. "How did you get in here?" Taeyong whispered. He looked up at the ventilation vent. It was open, the cover hanging loose. The babies must have crawled through the vent system. But why? And where was their mother? The smallest one, with scales that looked light blue in the artificial light, took a tiny step toward him. It chirped again, louder this time. The sound was heartbreaking. It sounded like a child crying for help. Taeyang's mind raced. He should call the main base. He should report this immediately. There were protocols for contact with native species, rules and regulations. He was supposed to observe only, never interact. But these babies were dying. He could see it. Their shivering was getting worse. Their chirps were getting weaker. The temperature outside was negative 40 degrees and dropping. Even inside his heated station, the corner near the vent was cold. They wouldn't survive the night here. The smallest one took another step toward him. Then it collapsed, too weak to move anymore. Taeyong didn't think. He just acted. He reached out and gently picked up the tiny dragon. It was so light, like holding air. Its scales were ice cold against his warm hands. The baby made a small sound, not scared anymore, just tired and cold. He picked up the other 2 as well, cradling all 3 against his chest. They were so small, so helpless. Their little hearts beat fast against his hands like tiny drums. Taeyong carried them to his bed and climbed back under the heated blanket. He positioned the 3 babies against his chest and wrapped the blanket around all of them. The blanket sensed the extra cold and increased its heat output automatically. The effect was immediate. The babies stopped shivering. They pressed closer to him, seeking his warmth. Their cold scales began to warm up slowly. One of them, the one with slightly purple scales, made a soft sound that almost seemed like a purr. Taeyong looked down at them. 3 dragon babies, wrapped up safe and warm in his blanket. Their eyes were starting to close. They felt safe now. They felt warm. He smiled. He couldn't help it. Yes, he was probably violating a dozen regulations. Yes, this would probably cause problems tomorrow. Yes, he should have called for instructions first. But looking at these 3 tiny lives, finally warm and safe, he knew he had made the right choice. The smallest one, the blue one, opened its eyes and looked directly at him. For a moment, they just stared at each other. Then the baby closed its eyes and fell asleep, its tiny head resting against Taeyang's heart. Outside, the wind howled louder. The temperature dropped to negative 45 degrees. A storm was coming, just like Dr. Yuna Lee had warned. But inside the small sleeping quarters of Research Station Delta 7, a human and 3 dragon babies slept peacefully together, wrapped in warmth and beginning of something that would change the galaxy forever. Taeyang's last thought before sleep took him was simple and clear. He would protect them. Whatever happened tomorrow, whatever rules he had broken, he would keep these babies safe. They had come to him for help, and he would not let them down. That was what humans did. That was what made them different. When someone needed help, even someone from another species, even someone who was supposed to be left alone, humans could not turn away. It was both their greatest weakness and their greatest strength. And tonight, in the frozen darkness of Draken Prime, it was exactly what 3 small dragon babies needed to survive. Morning came too quickly. Taeyong woke up to soft chirping sounds near his ear. He opened his eyes and found 3 pairs of bright eyes staring at him. The dragon babies were awake, looking at him with curiosity and something that might have been trust. The smallest one, the blue one, was sitting on his chest. It tilted its tiny head and chirped again. The sound was different from last night. Not scared anymore. Almost happy. Taeyong smiled despite the worry growing in his stomach. He had broken so many rules last night. Now, he had to face the consequences. He sat up carefully, making sure not to disturb the babies too much. They climbed off him and stood on the bed, watching his every move. Their scales looked healthier now, more solid and colorful in the morning light. The blue one had scales like the sky. The purple one had scales like twilight. The third one, slightly bigger than the others, had scales that were pale green like new leaves. "Good morning, little ones," Taeyong said softly. "I need to make a call. Stay here and stay warm." He got out of bed, and the 3 babies immediately followed him. They moved in a line, making small chirping sounds. When Taeyong stopped, they stopped. When he moved, they moved. It was like they were attached to him by invisible strings. Taeyong walked to the communication room with 3 dragon babies, following behind him like ducklings. He sat down at the console, and they gathered around his feet, pressing against his legs. He took a deep breath and opened the communication channel to the main base. The screen flickered to life. Dr. Yuna Lee's face appeared, looking tired. She was probably already working even though it was barely 7 in the morning. "Good morning, Taeyong. How are conditions at Delta 7? She asked. "Good morning, Dr. Lee. I need to report something unusual," Taeyong said. His voice sounded more nervous than he wanted it to. "Dr. Yuna," Lee leaned closer to her screen. "What kind of unusual?" "I have 3 dragon babies in my station. They came in through the ventilation system last night. They were freezing. I had to help them." For a moment, Dr. Yuna Lee just stared at him. Her expression went from confused to shocked to worried in the span of 3 seconds. "You have what?" she asked slowly. "Dragon babies. 3 of them. They're right here with me now." Taeyong tilted his screen down so she could see. The 3 babies looked up at the screen curiously. The purple one chirped at Dr. Yuna Lee's face. "Oh, no," Dr. Yuna Lee whispered. "Oh, no, no, no. Taeyong, this is serious. Hold on. I need to get Commander Hannah Park. Don't move." The screen went dark for a moment. Taeyong looked down at the 3 babies. They looked back at him innocently, not knowing the trouble they had caused just by existing in the wrong place. The screen came back on. Now 2 faces stared at him. Dr. Yuna Lee and another woman in a Galactic Federation uniform. Commander Hannah Park had short black hair and sharp eyes that seemed to see everything. "Mr. Kim," Commander Park said. Her voice was cold and professional. "I understand you have made contact with protected native species. Is this correct?" "Yes, Commander. But they came to me. They were dying from the cold. I couldn't just leave them. You should have called immediately. You should not have touched them. Do you understand that you have violated the non-interference protocol?" Taeyong felt his face grow hot. "I understand. But they were dying. What was I supposed to do? Watch them freeze to death while I waited for permission to help?" Commander Park's expression didn't change. The protocol exists for good reasons. Native species must develop naturally without outside interference. Contact with humans can create dangerous dependencies. "They're babies," Taeyong said. "They needed help." "Where's their mother?" Dr. Yuna Lee asked. Her voice was gentler than the commander's. "I don't know. She never came. I think something might have happened to her. These babies were alone and freezing." Commander Park typed something on her console. "Listen carefully, Mr. Kim. You need to place those creatures in a containment unit immediately. We will send a transport team to collect them. They will be taken to the Xenobiology Center for observation and care. The containment unit is in the storage room. It's not heated properly. They'll freeze in there," Taeyong protested. "Then adjust the temperature. But they cannot stay with you. Do you understand? This situation must be contained before it gets worse." Taeyong looked down at the 3 babies. The smallest blue one had climbed onto his foot and was looking up at him with those big, trusting eyes. "How long until the transport arrives?" he asked. Dr. Yuna Lee checked her screen. 3 days minimum. There's a storm system moving through your sector. Nothing can fly until it passes. 3 days? They need constant warmth. The containment unit can't provide that. It's designed for sample storage, not living creatures. Commander Park's jaw tightened. Then you have 48 hours to keep them stable. After that, you will place them in containment and wait for transport. That's an order, Mr. Kim. If you fail to comply, you will be removed from the research program and sent back to Earth. Am I clear? Yes, Commander, Taeyong said quietly. Good. Dr. Lee will monitor your situation. Report every 6 hours. And Mr. Kim, do not get attached. These are not pets. They are protected specimens. The screen went dark. Taeyong sat in silence for a long moment. The 3 babies chirped softly, sensing his mood. The blue one climbed up his leg and into his lap. It looked at him and made a questioning sound. "I'm okay, little one," Taeyong whispered. "We'll figure this out." But he wasn't sure if he believed his own words. The next 2 days passed in a strange rhythm. Taeyong tried to keep the babies at a distance, tried to treat them like the specimens Commander Park said they were. But it was impossible. They followed him everywhere. When he went to the lab, they came along and watched him work. When he ate meals, they sat at his feet and chirped until he gave them tiny pieces of his food. They liked the protein bars best, and they would crunch them with their small, sharp teeth. When he slept, they crawled into his blanket and pressed against him for warmth. The blue one always slept closest to his heart. The purple one liked to rest against his shoulder. The green one, the biggest, would curl up near his feet like a guard. Taeyong started calling them names in his head, even though he knew he shouldn't. The blue one was Sol, which meant sun in Korean. The purple one was Dao, which meant moon. The green one was Bio, which meant star. He never said the names out loud, but he thought them every time he looked at the babies. They were smart, frighteningly smart. On the second day, Taeyong was working in the lab when he dropped a tool. Before he could pick it up, Bio walked over and pushed it toward him with her nose. "Good job," Taeyong said without thinking. Bio chirped happily and sat down, looking proud of herself. That night, Taeyong couldn't sleep. He lay in bed with the 3 babies snuggled against him, thinking about what would happen tomorrow. He had to put them in the cold containment unit. He had to wait for the transport to take them away. They would go to a facility where scientists would study them behind glass walls. Sol shifted in his sleep and made a small sound. His tiny clawed foot pressed against Taeyang's chest, right over his heart. Taeyong made a decision. The next morning, when Dr. Yuna Lee called for his regular report, Taeyong was ready. "Commander Park, Dr. Lee, I have something to say," he began. Commander Park appeared on screen, looking impatient. "Make it quick, Mr. Kim. I cannot put these babies in containment. I will not put them in containment. They are living creatures who trust me. They need warmth and care. I am formally requesting asylum for them under the Human Compassion Clause of the Galactic Federation Charter." The silence that followed was heavy. Dr. Yuna Lee's eyes went wide. Commander Park's face turned red. "You're doing what?" Commander Park said, her voice dangerously quiet. Article 7 of the Galactic Federation Charter states that any human may request protection for endangered sentient beings if their life is at immediate risk. These babies are endangered. Their mother is gone. The cold will kill them. I am invoking Article 7. "Those creatures are not classified as sentient," Commander Park said. "Then classify them. Look at them. Really look at them." Taeyong turned his screen. The 3 babies were playing with a ball made from crumpled paper. They were taking turns pushing it to each other. When Sol pushed the ball, Dao would stop it and push it to Bio. It was a game. It was cooperation. It was intelligence. Dr. Yuna Lee leaned forward, watching closely. "They're playing," she whispered. "They're learning," Taeyong said. "They understand games. They understand taking turns. They respond to my voice. Yesterday, Bio brought me a tool I dropped. They're not just animals, Commander. They're people. Small, scaly people who need help." Commander Park stood up from her desk. "This is now a diplomatic incident, Mr. Kim. I am forwarding this to the Galactic Federation Council. Ambassador Jaiwan Song will be contacting you. Until then, you will remain at your station with those creatures. Do not make this worse than it already is." The screen went black. Taeyong looked down at Sol, Dal, and Bio. They had stopped playing and were looking at him with concern. They could sense his stress, even if they didn't understand the words. "It's going to be okay," he told them. "I won't let them take you away. I promise." Sol chirped softly and climbed into his lap. Dal and Bio followed. The 3 babies huddled together against him, seeking comfort. Outside, the wind howled. The storm was getting closer. But inside the station, a human had just declared war on bureaucracy for the sake of 3 small lives. And he had no intention of losing. The storm hit that afternoon like a hammer. Wind screamed against the metal walls of Research Station Delta 7. Snow fell so thick that Taeyong couldn't see more than a meter outside the windows. The temperature dropped to negative 50 degrees. Taeyong checked the weather report on his computer. The storm was worse than anyone predicted. It would last at least a week, maybe more. No ships could fly. No transport could come. He was completely alone with Sol, Dal, and Bile. The 3 babies seemed to sense the storm. They stayed close to Taeyong, chirping nervously whenever the wind made a particularly loud sound. Sol wouldn't leave his side at all. The little blue dragon followed him from room to room, making worried sounds. "It's okay," Taeyong told him. "The station is strong. The storm can't hurt us in here." But then the lights flickered. Taeyong's heart jumped. He ran to the control panel in the main room. The screen showed a warning in red letters. The heating system was having problems. Ice had formed on the external power unit. The system was running at only 60% capacity. No, Taeyong muttered. He typed commands quickly, trying to fix the problem remotely. But the ice was too thick. Someone would have to go outside and clear it manually. Going outside in the storm was dangerous. The cold could kill a person in minutes. But if the heating system failed completely, they would all freeze inside the station. Taeyong looked at the 3 babies. They were watching him with those big, trusting eyes. He had promised to protect them. He couldn't let them down now. He went to the storage room and pulled out his extreme weather suit. It was thick and heavy, designed to keep a human alive in the worst conditions Draken Prime could offer. He put on piece by piece. Thermal underwear, insulated suit, heavy boots, thick gloves, helmet with heated face shield. Sol, Dal, and Bile watched him dress. They seemed confused. They chirped questions at him that he couldn't understand. "I have to go outside for a little while," Taeyong explained. "I need to fix something. You 3 stay here where it's warm. I'll be back soon. I promise." He walked to the airlock. The babies followed him. When he opened the inner door, they tried to come with him. "No," Taeyong said firmly. "You have to stay inside. It's too cold out there for you." He gently pushed them back and closed the inner door. Through the small window, he could see all 3 babies pressing against the door. Sol was making loud, distressed chirps. Dal was scratching at the door. Bile was pacing back and forth. "I'll be right back," Taeyong said through the door. He didn't know if they could hear him. He opened the outer door, and the storm grabbed him immediately. Wind pushed him sideways. Snow hit his face shield like tiny bullets. He could barely see anything. The power unit was only 10 meters from the door, but it felt like 10 kilometers. Each step was a battle against the wind. His suit kept him warm, but he could feel the cold trying to get in through every seal and zipper. He reached the power unit and saw the problem. Ice covered the whole thing like a thick shell. The heating elements couldn't work properly. He pulled out a small ice scraper and started chipping away at the frozen coating. His hands were clumsy in the thick gloves. The work was slow. Minutes passed. The cold started seeping through his suit. His fingers began to hurt. Inside the station, the 3 babies were panicking. Taeyong couldn't see them, but he could imagine. So, crying by the door. Dal trying to find another way out. Bile probably standing guard, watching for his return. He worked faster, ignoring the cold, ignoring the pain in his hands. Finally, the last piece of ice broke off. The power unit hummed back to life. The heating system display on his suit screen showed green. Full power restored. Taeyong turned to go back to the airlock. That's when he slipped. His boot caught on ice. He fell hard, hitting the frozen ground. Pain shot through his shoulder. His face shield cracked. Not broken, but damaged. Cold air started leaking in. He tried to stand up, but his legs wouldn't work right. The fall had hurt something. He could move, but slowly. Too slowly. The cold was coming in through the crack in his face shield. He could feel it on his cheek. Sharp, painful, dangerous. Taeyong crawled toward the airlock. Each movement was agony. The wind pushed him down. The snow buried him. His hands stopped working properly. He couldn't feel his fingers anymore. He was 5 meters from safety, then 4 meters, then 3. His vision started getting dark around the edges. The cold was winning. He thought about Sol, Dal, and Bio waiting for him inside. He had promised to come back. He couldn't break that promise. 2 meters, 1 meter. His hand touched the airlock door. He tried to pull himself up, but couldn't. His strength was gone. The cold had taken everything. This was it. He was going to die 10 steps from safety. Then the airlock door opened from inside. 3 small shapes rushed out into the storm. Sol, Dal, and Bio. They had somehow managed to open the door. They surrounded Taeyong, pressing their warm bodies against him. But they were in danger now, too. The cold would kill them even faster than it would kill him. What were they doing? Then Taeyong felt something strange. Heat. Real heat, not from his suit. It was coming from the babies. The 3 dragons were glowing slightly. Their scales were producing warmth. Not a lot, but enough. They pressed closer to him, sharing their heat. Sol climbed onto his chest. Dal pressed against his injured shoulder. Bio pushed against his back. Together, they generated enough warmth to give Taeyong his strength back. His fingers started working again. His vision cleared. He grabbed the airlock door frame and pulled himself inside. The 3 babies scrambled in with him. The outer door closed. The inner door opened. They all tumbled into the station in a heap of human and dragons. Taeyong lay on the floor, breathing hard. The babies climbed on top of him, chirping with relief and worry. They licked his face with their small tongues. They pressed against him. They had saved his life. "Thank you," Taeyong whispered. "Thank you, little ones." He didn't know how they had opened the door. He didn't know how they had known he was in trouble. He didn't know how they had generated that heat. But they had done it. They had saved him. After a few minutes, Taeyong managed to stand up. He took off the damaged suit and checked himself for injuries. His shoulder was bruised but not broken. His face was red from the cold, but nothing was frostbitten. He had been lucky. The babies had made him lucky. He went to the smallest room in the station, the storage room. It was tiny, barely big enough for one person to stand in, but it was also the warmest room because it was in the center of the station, away from the outer walls. Taeyong brought his blanket, some pillows, some food, and water. He made a nest in the storage room. Then he gathered Sol, Dal, and Bio and brought them into the small space. "We're going to stay here until the storm passes," he told them. "It's safer. It's warmer." The babies seemed to understand. They settled into the blanket nest, curling around each other. That night was the longest of Taeyong's life. The storm raged outside. The station groaned and creaked. The heating system struggled to keep up with the extreme cold. Taeyong and the 3 babies huddled together in the storage room, sharing warmth and comfort. He talked to them through the long, dark hours. He told them about Earth, about green forests and blue oceans. He told them about his family, about his sister, who loved animals. He told them about why he had come to space, to explore and learn and find new things. The babies listened. They made soft sounds in response. Sol would chirp when Taeyong mentioned his sister. Dal seemed interested in the stories about oceans. Bio always chirped when he talked about exploring. On the 3rd night of the storm, something changed. Taeyong was telling a story about his first day at the research academy when Sol made a sound that wasn't just a chirp. It was almost a word. Not quite human speech, but trying to copy the sounds Taeyong made. "Did you just try to talk?" Taeyong asked in amazement. Sol chirped again, then made that almost word sound. Dal and Bio looked at their sibling with surprise. "You're trying to communicate," Taeyong said slowly. "You're trying to learn my language." Over the next few days, the babies started making more complex sounds. They began responding differently to different words. When Taeyong said food, they would chirp excitedly. When he said sleep, they would yawn and settle down. When he said safe, they would relax. They were learning. They were understanding. They were becoming more than just babies he was protecting. They were becoming his family. On the 7th day, the storm finally ended. The wind stopped. The snow settled. The sun came out from behind the clouds for the first time in a week. Taeyong opened the communication channel. He needed to report to the main base. He needed to tell them what had happened. He needed to tell them that everything had changed. But before he could make the call, a message came through. It was from Commander Park. Her face appeared on the screen, and she did not look happy. Mr. Kim, Ambassador Jaiwan Song, is on her way to your location. She will arrive in 2 days. She's coming to evaluate the situation personally. The Galactic Federation has received your asylum request. They are not pleased. This is now a matter of interstellar law. Taeyong looked down at Sol, Dal, and Bile. They looked back at him with trust and affection. Let them come, Taeyong said quietly. I'm not giving up these babies. They saved my life. We saved each other. That has to mean something. Commander Park's expression softened slightly. I hope you know what you're doing, Mr. Kim. The entire galaxy is watching now. The screen went dark. Taeyong sat in silence, holding Sol in his arms. The little blue dragon looked up at him and made that almost word sound again. It sounded like safe. Yes, Taeyong said. You're safe. I promise. Outside, the frozen landscape of Draken Prime sparkled in the sunlight. Somewhere in the mountains, adult dragons were watching. They had seen the humans save the babies. They had seen the babies save the human. And they were waiting to see what would happen next. 2 days after the storm ended, a transport ship landed near Research Station Delta 7. Taeyong watched it from his window. His stomach felt tight with worry. Sol, Dal, and Bile stood beside him, looking at the ship with curiosity. They had grown bigger in the past week. Now they were the size of small dogs, and their scales had become brighter and stronger. The ship door opened. A woman stepped out, wearing a formal suit with the Galactic Federation symbol on her jacket. She walked toward the station with confidence. Behind her, 2 guards followed, carrying equipment cases. Taeyong went to the airlock to meet them. The 3 babies followed close behind him. As always, when the visitors entered the station, they stopped and stared at Sol, Dal, and Bile. They're bigger than I expected, the woman said. She was in her 40s with sharp eyes and a serious expression. I am Ambassador Jaiwan Song. I'm here to evaluate this situation and make a recommendation to the Galactic Federation Council. Welcome to Delta 7, Ambassador, Taeyong said. He tried to keep his voice steady, but his hands were shaking slightly. Everything depended on what this woman decided. Ambassador Song looked at the 3 babies carefully. Sol chirped at her. Dal tilted his head, studying her. Bile moved protectively closer to Taeyong. They seem attached to you, the ambassador observed. We survived the storm together, Taeyong said. They saved my life when I was freezing outside. We've bonded. The ambassador's expression didn't change. That's exactly the problem, Mr. Kim. The Galactic Federation has rules against forming bonds with protected species. These dragons are supposed to develop naturally without human influence. They would be dead without human influence, Taeyong replied. Their mother abandoned them, or died. They came to me for help. Was I supposed to let them freeze? You were supposed to follow protocol and call for instructions, Ambassador Song said. She wasn't angry, just stating facts. But what's done is done. Now we need to decide what happens next. She walked further into the station. The guards set down their equipment and began setting up recording devices. This was going to be an official evaluation. Everything would be documented and sent to the Federation Council. Show me your daily routine with them, Ambassador Song said. I want to see how they behave, how intelligent they are, how dependent they become. For the next few hours, Taeyong showed the ambassador everything. He fed the babies their morning meal. They ate pieces of protein bar and some vegetables he had prepared. They took turns eating, never pushing each other away. They shared their food equally. Ambassador Song watched this carefully. She made notes on her tablet. Next, Taeyong showed how the babies had learned to respond to words. He said, sit, and all 3 babies sat down. He said, come, and they walked to him. He said, stay, and they stayed in place, even though they clearly wanted to follow him. Impressive, the ambassador admitted. They understand commands. That shows significant intelligence. They understand more than commands, Taeyong said. Watch this. He picked up 3 color balls. Red, blue, and green. He pointed to Soul and said, "Blue." The little blue dragon walked over and pushed the blue ball toward him. He pointed to Bile and said, "Green." The green dragon brought the green ball. Dao brought the red ball without being asked. Ambassador Song's eyes widened slightly. They recognize colors. They understand association. Mr. Kim, do you realize what this means? These creatures might be sentient. I've known that since the first day, Taeyong said quietly. That's why I can't let them go to a laboratory. They're not specimens. They're people. The ambassador was quiet for a long moment. She watched Soul, Dao, and Bile playing together with the colored balls. They had invented a game where they rolled the balls to each other in a pattern. Red, then blue, then green. Over and over. It was organized. It was intentional. It was intelligent. The Federation Council won't like this, Ambassador Song finally said. If we classify these dragons as sentient, it changes everything. Draken Prime would be classified as an inhabited world. We'd have to establish diplomatic relations. We'd have to respect their sovereignty. Isn't it the right thing to do? Taeyong asked. Before the ambassador could answer, an alarm sounded. The perimeter sensors had detected something. Something big. Multiple large shapes were approaching the station from the mountains. Taeyong ran to the window. His breath caught in his throat. Dragons. Adult dragons. At least a dozen of them, flying down from the peaks. They were massive, with wingspans as wide as the research station itself. Their scales gleamed in the sunlight, colors of deep blue, purple, green, and red. "Get away from the window," one of the guards shouted. He reached for his weapon. "No!" Taeyong stepped between the guard and the window. "Don't shoot. They haven't attacked. They're just approaching." The adult dragons landed around the station, in a circle. They didn't try to break in. They didn't roar or threaten. They just sat there, watching, waiting. Soul, Dao, and Bile ran to the window. They started making loud calls, sounds Taeyong had never heard before. The adult dragons outside responded with their own calls. It was communication. They were talking to each other. "This is unprecedented," Ambassador Song said. She was recording everything on her tablet. Adult dragons never approach human installations. Never. What changed? "The babies," Taeyong said. "They must be calling to their family." One of the adult dragons, bigger than the others with scales of deep midnight blue, moved closer to the window. It looked directly at Soul through the glass. The big dragon and the little dragon stared at each other. Then the big dragon looked at Taeyong. The intelligence in those eyes was unmistakable. This was no animal. This was a thinking, feeling being. Ambassador Song stepped forward slowly. "We need to try to communicate with them. Mr. Kim, we have translation technology in our equipment. It's experimental, designed to analyze animal sounds and find patterns. It might work with these dragons." The guards quickly set up the translation device. It looked like a large microphone connected to a computer. They pointed it at the window, at the big blue dragon. The dragon made a sound, low and rumbling. The computer analyzed it, breaking down the frequencies and patterns. Words appeared on the screen. Watching, testing, waiting. Everyone in the station froze. The translation had worked. The dragon had communicated 3 clear concepts. Ambassador Song stepped closer to the window. She spoke slowly and clearly. "We mean no harm. We are caring for the young ones. They were in danger." The computer translated her words into dragon sounds and played them through an external speaker. The big dragon's eyes narrowed. It made another sound. The translation appeared. "Cold death coming. Young ones vulnerable. Human warm giver. They left the babies here on purpose," Taeyong said suddenly. "It was a test. They wanted to see if I would help them." The dragon made a longer, more complex sound. The computer worked hard to translate it. "Many stars, many worlds, many peoples. Most follow stone rules. Few follow heart rules. Human warm giver follows heart rules. Human warm giver saves young ones not his kind. This is good." Ambassador Song's hands were shaking as she typed on her tablet. They're saying you passed their test. They were evaluating humanity through you. Another dragon, this one with green scales like bile, made a sound. The translation came through. Young ones bonded. Young ones safe. Young ones learning both ways. Human warm giver also learning. This is balance. They approve the bond, Taeyong whispered. He looked down at Sol, Dal, and Bile. The three babies were watching the adult dragons with respect, but no fear. They felt safe here with Taeyong. The big blue dragon made one more statement. It was long and formal sounding. The translation scrolled across the screen. Long time we watch humans. Humans different from others. Humans feel deeply. Humans help not their kind. Some humans bad. Some humans good. This human good. We offer speaking together. We offer learn together. We offer friendship between kinds. If humans accept. Ambassador Song turned to look at Taeyong. Her expression had completely changed. She wasn't evaluating him anymore. She was looking at him with something like awe. Mr. Kim, do you understand what just happened? They're offering humanity an alliance. The dragons of Draken Prime are offering to be our allies. This has never happened before. No species on this moon has ever contacted outsiders. Because we helped their babies, Taeyong said. Because we showed kindness when we didn't have to. Sol chirped and rubbed against Taeyang's leg. The little blue dragon looked up at him with complete trust. Outside, the big blue dragon watched this interaction. Then it made a sound that the computer translated as, Young one chose well. Human warm giver has good heart. Ambassador Song took a deep breath. She spoke into her communication device. This is Ambassador Jaiwin Song. I'm making my official recommendation to the Galactic Federation Council. The dragons of Draken Prime are sentient beings. They have language, culture, and diplomatic capability. I recommend immediate classification change and the establishment of formal relations. Furthermore, I recommend that Mr. Taeyong Kim be granted permanent guardianship of the 3 juvenile dragons currently in his care, as his bond has proven to be the foundation of our new alliance. She ended the call and looked at Taeyong. The council will debate this for days, maybe weeks. But I think you've won, Mr. Kim. You and these 3 little dragons have changed everything. Taeyong sat down, suddenly feeling weak. He had done it. He had protected Sol, Dal, and Bile. He had proven that humanity's compassion was its greatest strength. The 3 babies climbed onto him, chirping happily. They didn't understand politics or diplomacy. They just knew they were safe. They knew they were loved. And that was enough. The Galactic Federation Council took 3 weeks to make their decision. 3 long weeks where Taeyong waited at Research Station Delta 7 with Sol, Dal, and Bile. The adult dragons remained camped around the station, a silent presence that both protected and observed. During those weeks, Taeyang's life changed in ways he never expected. Scientists arrived from the main base to study the dragons. Dr. Yuna Lee came personally, bringing better translation equipment and more supplies. Even Commander Park visited, though she said very little, and spent most of her time watching the interactions between humans and dragons. Sol, Dal, and Bile grew quickly. By the end of the 2nd week, they were the size of large dogs. Their wings had strengthened, and they could now glide short distances. Their scales had become harder and more colorful. Sol's blue scales shimmered like sky. Dal's purple scales looked like twilight. Bile's green scales reminded Taeyong of spring leaves. More importantly, they had learned to speak. Not perfectly, but enough to be understood. They used a mix of dragon sounds and human words. Sol was the best talker, always chattering about everything he saw. Dal was quieter, more thoughtful. Bile was protective, always making sure Taeyong was safe. Taeyong, Sol would say, his pronunciation getting better each day. Food? Hungry. Taeyong warm. Dal would add, snuggling against him. Taeyong safe. We guard. Bile would declare, puffing out his chest. The adult dragons also learned to use the translation technology. The big blue dragon, who Taeyong learned was a clan elder named Skyrend, visited the station several times. He spoke about dragon history, about how they had watched many species come to their moon, but never trusted any of them until now. Humans feel with hearts, Skyren said to the translator. Other species think with minds only. Dragons value feeling. Dragons value heart choice over rule choice. On the morning of the 21st day, Ambassador Song's face appeared on the communication screen. She looked tired but happy. Mr. Kim, the council has made their decision. I wanted you to hear it directly from me before the official announcement. Taeyong stood up straight. Sol, Dal, and Bio gathered around him, sensing the importance of the moment. The Galactic Federation officially recognizes the dragons of Draken Prime as a sentient species with full rights and protections. Draken Prime is now classified as an inhabited world. We are establishing diplomatic relations immediately. Taeyong felt relief wash over him. He put his hand on Sol's head. The little blue dragon chirped happily. Ambassador Song continued. Furthermore, the council has approved your guardianship petition. Sol, Dal, and Bio are officially under your care. You are their legal guardian. However, there are conditions. What conditions? Taeyong asked. You must remain on Draken Prime as humanity's official liaison to the dragon clans. You will receive a promotion and better facilities. The research station will be expanded into a proper embassy. You will work with dragon representatives to build understanding between our species. Taeyong looked down at the three dragons who had changed his life. They looked back at him with trust and love. He thought about going back to Earth, about seeing his family again. But then he thought about leaving Sol, Dal, and Bio. He thought about abandoning this new friendship between species. I accept, he said. This is where I belong now. Ambassador Song smiled. I thought you'd say that. Congratulations, Ambassador Kim. You're humanity's youngest ambassador in history, and probably the only one with 3 dragons as family. The screen went dark. For a moment, Taeyong just stood there, trying to process everything. Then Sol jumped up and licked his face. We stay? Together? The little blue dragon asked. Yes, Taeyong said, laughing. We stay together. Always. Dal and Bile joined in, and suddenly Taeyong was buried under 3 excited young dragons, all chirping and making happy sounds. 6 months passed. Research Station Delta 7 was transformed into Embassy Delta, a much larger complex with rooms for human staff, meeting halls for diplomatic discussions, and open spaces where dragons could come and go freely. More humans arrived to help build the relationship between species. Teachers came to learn dragon language. Engineers came to study dragon architecture in the mountains. Medical staff came to understand dragon biology. But the heart of everything remained the same. Taeyong and his 3 dragons. Sol, Dao, and Bio were now the size of horses. Their wings were powerful enough to fly, and they often soared above the embassy, playing in the cold air. But every night, they still came to Taeyang's room. They still curled up around him, seeking the warmth and comfort they had found that first cold night. Young dragons from other clans began visiting the embassy. They were curious about humans. They wanted to learn and play. Soon there were dragon children and human children learning together, playing together, becoming friends. The adult dragons shared their knowledge. They taught humans about the deep caves in the mountains where hot springs provided warmth. They showed humans how to predict weather by watching the wind patterns. They shared stories that had been passed down for thousands of generations. In return, humans shared their own knowledge. They taught dragons about other worlds and other species. They showed them human art and music. They brought books and films from Earth, translated into dragon language. Skyren, the clan elder, became a regular visitor to the embassy. He and Taeyong often sat together, drinking hot tea and discussing philosophy, culture, and the nature of friendship between different species. You saved 3 small lives, Skyren said one evening, and by saving them, you saved us all. We were alone for so long, isolated, afraid to trust. Your kindness opened a door that had been closed for centuries. I just did what felt right, Taeyong replied. I couldn't let them freeze. That is exactly why it worked, Skyren said. You followed your heart, not your rules. Rules are important, but hearts are more important. This is what dragons believe. This is why we chose humans. 1 year after that first cold night, on the anniversary of finding Sol, Dal, and Bile, the embassy held a celebration. Dragons and humans gathered together. There was food, music, and games. Young dragons flew overhead, showing off their aerial tricks. Human children laughed and played with dragon children. Taeyong stood outside, wrapped in his old blanket, watching the celebration. Sol, Dal, and Bile stood beside him. They were full-grown now, magnificent and powerful. Sol's blue scales gleamed like sapphires. Dal's purple scales seemed to hold the light of stars. Bile's green scales reminded everyone of life and growth. Do you remember that night? Taeyong asked them, when you were so small and cold? Remember, Sol said. His speech was perfect now, with only a slight accent. Scared, cold, thought we would die. Then found you. Found warmth, Dal added. Found safety. Found family. Found home. Bile finished. Taeyong smiled. He looked up at the stars, thinking about how far he had come from that lonely researcher monitoring ice samples. He thought about his family on Earth. He had called them last week. His mother cried happy tears when she saw the dragons on the video call. His sister wanted to visit and meet them. I was alone before you came, Taeyong said quietly. I was just doing my job, following the rules, staying safe. But I wasn't really living. You three taught me that following your heart is more important than following rules. You taught me that family isn't about species or biology. It's about love and trust and being there for each other. Sol leaned his large head against Taeyang's shoulder. You saved us first. No, Taeyong said. We saved each other. Commander Park approached them. She had been promoted to Director of Interspecies Relations. She wasn't cold and distant anymore. Working with the dragons had changed her too. Ambassador Kim, the council wants to expand the program. They want to establish embassies on 5 other worlds. They want humans and dragons working together to build bridges with other species. They're calling it the Draken Initiative. Draken Initiative, Dal repeated, testing the words. We help others like Taeyong helped us. Exactly like that, Commander Park said. We show the galaxy that different species can be family, that compassion matters more than protocol. Bile spread his wings wide. We fly far. We teach others. Hearts before rules. Taeyong looked at his 3 dragons, at the humans and dragons celebrating together, at the future they were all building. He thought about that first night, when 3 tiny dragons had crawled into his blanket, seeking warmth. He had given them warmth, and they had given him purpose. Tell the council we accept, Taeyong said. We'll take this message to the stars. We'll show everyone what's possible when you choose kindness over fear. The celebration continued into the night. Music played. Dragons and humans danced together. Children of both species played games in the snow. It was beautiful and strange and perfect. As the evening grew late, Taeyong went back to his quarters. Sol, Dal, and Bile followed, as they always did. His room was bigger now, designed to accommodate 3 full-grown dragons. But the most important thing remained the same. His old heated blanket was still there, spread across his bed. The 4 of them climbed onto the bed together, just like they had done a year ago. Taeyong wrapped the blanket around them all. It was barely big enough now, but it still worked. Sol curled against his chest. Dal rested his head on Taeyang's shoulder. Bile stretched out near his feet, standing guard even in sleep. Good night, my family, Taeyong whispered. Good night, Taeyong, the 3 dragons said together. Outside, the wind blew cold across Draken Prime. The temperature dropped to -40 degrees. The stars shone bright in the clear sky. Adult dragons flew overhead, protecting the embassy and all who lived there. But inside one small room, a human and 3 dragons slept peacefully, wrapped in an old blanket and the warmth of love that had changed the galaxy forever. Taeyong smiled in his sleep, dreaming of the future. A future where humans and dragons explored the stars together. A future built on compassion, trust, and the simple act of sharing warmth on a cold night. It had all started with 3 small lives that needed help, and 1 human who couldn't turn away. That was humanity's gift to the galaxy. Not technology or weapons or wealth, just a simple, powerful choice to care for others, even when it was difficult, even when it broke the rules, even when it seemed impossible. Because in the end, that was what made humans special. That was what made them worthy of friendship with dragons. They followed their hearts. They chose kindness. They saved 3 small dragons. And in doing so, they saved themselves